So what is reality? I mean, we think we know it when we see it, right? But what if I told you that existence isn't really about what gets created, but what's tough enough to survive? Today, we're going to dig into a new theory that completely flips our understanding of reality right on its head.
Okay, let's start with a question that seems simple, but it gets to the heart of this huge mystery. You and I both know a tree is real, and a talking dog, well, it isn't. But why? I mean, really think about it. Why did one of those possibilities make it into our world, while countless others just didn't?
Now, you might think the answer is all about biology or physics, and yeah, that's part of it. But a new framework called operator reality theory suggests we've been looking at it all wrong. It says the real answer isn't about what can be created, it's about what can survive, a pretty brutal selection process. Existence, it turns out, is a survival game.
All right, so to really get our heads around this whole survival idea, we first need to appreciate the massive question that traditional science has always kind of struggled with. Think about it. Physics, philosophy, math, they are incredible at describing the reality we already have. You know, its laws, its particles, its logic. But they don't really tell us why we got this specific reality out of an infinite menu of other possibilities. They're great at describing the winners of the game, but they don't explain the game itself. And this is the core idea of operator reality theory. It just flips the whole script. See, reality isn't what's actively built up from nothing. It's what's left over after everything unstable or inconsistent or just plain unfit has been weeded out. Existence is what remains.
Okay, so if reality is just what survives the filter, that begs a new question, right? Where do all of these candidates for reality even come from in the first place?
Well, the theory starts with this absolutely mind-bending concept called the possibility space. Picture an infinite, chaotic sea of every potential thing, every idea, every possible configuration that could ever be. It's the raw, unfiltered stuff that exists before reality even happens.
And look, the scale here is just impossible to wrap your head around. It doesn't just contain things that could be, like a different law of gravity. It also has things that are completely inconsistent or unstable, literally everything you can imagine and everything you can't. The vast majority of this stuff will never, ever become real.
So, the big question is, how does anything make it out of that chaos and into our world? Let's get into the core mechanism of the theory, what it calls the rules of existence.
To get from that wild possibility space to what we call reality, a potential state has to run a gauntlet. It's this series of tests or filters, and the theory calls it an operator chain. You can think of it like a cosmic quality control process, and it is ruthless.
And this is basically how it works, like a funnel. A possibility has to pass through all these stages. It's got to be valid, it has to be stable, and it needs enough energy to stick around. But here's the kicker. At each step, more and more possibilities get eliminated. And to truly become real, a state has to survive this process not just once, but over and over and over again. Almost nothing makes it through.
So let's be super clear. This is not just a simple mapping where you put something in and something else comes out. An operator is all about survival. It's not just describing what becomes what, it's a dynamic process that decides what is allowed to keep existing. So after all that, after running this brutal gauntlet, what do we call the tiny fraction of states that actually survive and manage to stick around?
The survivors, they're called attractors. These are basically the stable points of reality. You know, a tree, that's an attractor. The laws of gravity, that's an attractor. They're the states that, once a system finds them, it tends to stay there because they're the stable solutions that have passed the test time and time again.
And this is where you can really visualize just how radical this selection process is. You start with the near infinite vastness of the possibility space. But as those operator chains do their work, reality just contracts and contracts until only that tiny, stable sliver becomes what we perceive as real, the attractors.
Okay, I know this all might sound super abstract, cosmic filters, possibility spaces, but this is where the theory gets really personal. It suggests that we aren't just watching reality from the sidelines. No, we are active participants in building it.
Just think about something like money or laws. You can't dig money out of the ground, right? It's not a natural object. These things exist as a kind of artificial reality. And why? Because they are ideas that survived our own socio-cognitive operator chain. We validated them, we compressed them into rules and symbols, and we energized them with our collective belief. We keep them real.
This totally reframes how we think about our own minds. We aren't just pulling reality out of thin air with our thoughts.
Instead, our minds are the arenas. They're the local possibility spaces where ideas and concepts literally fight for their existence. The winning ideas, the ones that become our beliefs and actions, are simply the ones that are stable and compelling enough to survive the battle in our heads.
And if you're ready for it, the theory takes this one final mind-bending step. It suggests that even our own sense of I, that feeling that there's a little pilot in your head pulling the levers, is also a cognitive attractor. That feeling of making a decision isn't the cause of the action, it's the stable, compressed summary of a massive, unobserved operator chain firing in your brain. The self isn't the director, it's the result.
And so, to leave you with one final thought, it all comes back to this. Reality isn't some grand design that was carefully built. It's the echo. It's the survivor. It's the tiny set of stable things that manage to make it through an endless cosmic process of elimination. So maybe the question was never, why does something exist? Maybe the real question is, how in the world did it manage to survive?